The first thing that I want to touch on is Aaron Donald. Okay, because what Aaron Donald did last night is something most defensive players cannot do. He got his ring, and I'm thrilled for him. I don't know about this retirement stuff, all right? But whenever you are one of the greats, all right, and I'm a huge Aaron Donald fan, but I would say even the players that maybe weren't my favorite, if they were going to go down as one of the greats, I always want them to have a ring to kind of solidify because you're just not allowed to go ahead and do it. And not only did he do it as a defensive player, where a lot of times you'd be like, yeah, the quarterback still had to do a lot of stuff. What Donald did in that second half last night just doesn't really happen a lot. The way he impacted the game. I'm not saying no one else done, but you see that he could change that game in the second half as a non-quarterback. It's a very hard thing to do in the sport with 22 people flying around on the field at the same time. Let's run through Donald's resume one more time. He's been in the league 8 years, rookie of the year 2014. He's got the Super Bowl now, 8-time Pro Bowler, 7 times he's been first team All-Pro, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, made the 2010 All-Decade team. PFF has given it a 90-plus grade every single year. That might be, again, I know we can argue about grades and all these different things. That just doesn't happen very often. He's only missed 2 games, and I really think he should have been the MVP last night, not Cooper Kupp, but that's fine because Kupp had the huge fourth quarter. In the first half, Cincinnati did a pretty good job. The game plan is to prevent Aaron Donald from wrecking your game plan. Second half, he destroyed everything. Think about this. Burrow sacked once in the first half, 6 times in the second half. And the other thing that I noticed too, not only because, again, mentioning Chris Long 100 times in this podcast, but I ask about Donald, the world texts about Donald, or something will happen with Donald, and I go, what's up with him? And Chris has played with a lot of players, all right? And if you play defensive end, I think for a decade plus, you're usually closer towards the tough guy phase. And I ask about Donald, he's like, no, he's the guy. He's the one before anybody else. Like that's how tough he is. Like it's all real with him. And I noticed the play last night where Burrow, it ended up being a sack for Donald, but Burrow's going out of bounds. And not only did Donald push him out of bounds, he pushed him in a way where I was like, look how strong that guy is. Because most players in that play, yeah, all right, you divert his path, he goes out of bounds. He chucked him. And by the way, it was totally legal. Burrow's in bounds, whatever. So just because the quarterback gets tossed to the sideline, somebody has to come across and kind of get in your face and talk shit with you. And that's what happened with Donald. And Donald immediately arms out like ready to go MacGruber on dudes' throats. And then he was pissed off. And just like I've talked about with guys that have played with him, or Joe Thomas, who played against him, who was on this podcast very recently, talking specifically about Donald, who is always great on every play, but the next level that he takes it to once he's pissed off. And I think that's what happened after that play. So Burrow sacked 6 times in the second half for 35 yards. We can get into Dilfer what the overload really was or wasn't on the defensive front formations. That was debated a bit there. Then we come down to that last drive where Cincinnati's trying to figure out a way to tie this thing up with a field goal. Remember, about a minute plus left. They still have their 2 timeouts. It's Joe Burrow. 2 plays stand out. Ryen, 3rd and 1. Donald reaches out, grabs Ryen, and Ryen stops moving forward. Like you could see the physics of it. Where you're like, wait, it looked like he ran into something. And Donald wasn't square up in front of him. He was to the side of him, and Ryen all of a sudden just stops. And I noticed, I was like, wait, that had, rewind it, Donald. A running back that strong, because Ryan's a bigger dude, just stop moving forward. So Donald makes the play on 3rd and 1. 4th and 1, who makes the play? Aaron Donald. He finds a way. He gets through the pressure. He's off the ball quick. He's peaking at the right time. I always say how much I love basketball because basketball, if you are that special player, you can find a way to impact the game immediately if you're that special and you're wired that way. Baseball, a lot of things, a lot of factors. Football, other than the quarterback, just a million factors. Even sometimes with the quarterback, there can be other stuff that falls apart. It's the great team sport, but it's also at times very difficult to stand out as an individual. And Donald did these things from the defensive line. It's not like he's wide out the entire time against some completely overmatched tackle. He's moving around. They had to figure that out, and they shut them down in the second half. Burrow now sacked 19 times in the playoffs, the most in a postseason in the last 20 years. No one's been sacked more than 12. This game was 20-13 with 10 minutes to go in the third quarter. Cincinnati then had 4 punts, and then the final possession, the turnover on downs. So Cincinnati actually kind of fell apart here offensively. Now, the Rams had their kind of what the hell is McVay doing moment, which I can't wait to talk to Dilfer about as well, where after the Rams had a 52-yard drive for a field goal to make it 2016, they went 3 and out 6 yards, 3 and out 3 yards, 3 and out minus 3 yards. Now, during that stretch, they had 4 rushing attempts for a total of 2 yards. And then pretty much other than an Akers run on that final drive that was 15 plays for 79 yards, which was the go-ahead TD, they kind of just bailed on the entire thing. The Kupp numbers in the fourth quarter are incredible. In the playoffs, Stafford to Kupp, 12 for 12, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 first downs. The play that Cincinnati fans are going to remember forever, the Logan Wilson penalty for holding on 3rd and goal at the 8. Because at that point, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how are they going to play it out? They're down 4. They had missed the extra point. Are they going to be able to, they're going to have to go for it here on 4th down. I thought that was a pretty weak call. We can get into all sorts of finger pointing on who's called for what. The Ramsey face mask was terrible. You got to call that. You can't make that play if you're a corner. Yes, the false start by the entire offensive line. But I think as far as holding calls go, that one was pretty weak. Usually, if it's a jersey grab, you're going to go ahead and get it called. I thought that one was pretty weak. But again, there's a lot of stuff out there, and Cincinnati offensively did not have much happening on offense. The final TD drive, though, that 2nd and 7 throw to Kupp for 22 yards, that for me is the Stafford throw and why we've been fawning over his abilities for so long. You know, Stafford went 0 for 3 in playoff games in Detroit. His defense allowed about 32 points per game on average in those losses. We know that his combined EPA of the defense and special teams, I think over that time at Detroit, was in the 20s somewhere in the NFL. They never ran the football. He did have Calvin Johnson, but I just think it's a very reasonable thing to say, hey, he's a really talented guy who didn't have a lot of support. This rush to now he's overnight a Hall of Famer, I guess that's the way it works with Super Bowls. I'm not going to argue against it. I think there's some guys where I just go, look, you're in a different group, so it maybe takes you a little bit longer. But that touchdown drive and that throw specifically, that was the moment where I go, this is why we spend so much time talking about his arm ability and all these things. I thought that throw was unbelievable. So I'm happy for Stafford. You know, there really wasn't anybody involved in this game that I was rooting against. There was no take I was super invested in. I mean, before the season started, I picked the Rams to be in the Super Bowl. So as this one played out, maybe it feels closer than it was, but the Rams couldn't run the football too. I think the sneaky part about this is that Cincinnati defensively probably held up a little bit better than you would think at times, considering how the game started, how the Cincinnati Bengals looked on defense during the regular season. But they needed a couple more stops. Just things weren't working out for them at the end. So, look, there's actually this is one of those weird deals. As a guy that talks about this stuff all the time, I'm actually happier for way more people in this one and the end result than I would be anti. You know, it feels, if there's any kind of confirmation, the headline isn't McVay confirmation. It isn't Stafford confirmation. Aaron Donald already had the confirmation, but I love those 3+ hours for that guy. This was his moment, I think, more than anyone else involved in last night's game. And, you know, not that he needed this, say, hey, you know who's pretty good is Aaron Donald, but I'm thrilled that the best defensive player of his generation got his moment to show off on the biggest stage.